of the NBA Finals, I do want to preview this year's NBA Finals just a touch. Boston Celtics obviously punched their ticket to the NBA Finals last night. The Golden State Warriors in San Francisco, they solidified their spot in the NBA Finals several days earlier, dismantling the Dallas Mavericks in 5 games. So now it sets up a really fascinating matchup between two teams, the Celtics and the Warriors, that have actually provided a lot of intriguing regular season matchups over the past several years. In fact, obviously this year, both teams split both games, each team winning on the opposing team's home floor. The Warriors beat the Celtics 111 to 107 at TD Garden earlier in the year. And then the Celtics returned the favor, winning 110 to 88 in San Francisco at the Chase Center. Now, the only difference in that second go round was Marcus Smart ended up falling on Steph Curry's ankle or leg, and it ended up hurting and injuring Steph Curry. It sidelined him for the final 2 to 3 weeks of the regular season, which is obviously adding some fuel to this juicy matchup here. But the Boston Celtics have actually beaten the Warriors 5 out of their last 6 times over the last 3 seasons. Now, again, the Warriors have been dealing with a bevy of injuries sustained to Klay Thompson. They haven't played the Celtics many times with Klay Thompson. Steph Curry's been hurt or in and out of the lineup several times. So that is the one caveat. But the Celtics have had the highest winning percentage against the Warriors since Steve Kerr took over as the head coach in the 2015 and 2016 season. And that's what's impressive, because they're 9-7 against the Warriors. They have the highest winning percentage. No other team has managed to win at that type of clip. So I just think from a fascination standpoint, this is a very compelling matchup, because you've got some of that tension between Curry and Marcus Smart. You've got the fact that the Celtics have had such a strong record against the Warriors. And then you look at some of the narratives surrounding these two teams and how they arrived to this point. The Boston Celtics, you go back to January when they lost to the Portland Trail Blazers. They dropped to 23-24. They were below 500. They're just on the outskirts of the playoff picture. And they finished off their season going 28-7 over their final 35 games. They were the best team in the NBA since that loss to Portland. And now they're in the NBA playoffs. And I think that the Warriors haven't gotten enough credit as well. I do think that while the Phoenix Suns were taking over the West, people were forgetting that the Warriors were actually keeping pace with the Suns until their litany of injuries kind of derailed them and set them back a couple slots. And that's when Memphis ascended. And people kind of forgot the Warriors had an incredible regular season as well. When you win over 55 games in the regular season, that is a tremendous season as well. So it's only fitting that these would be the two teams that would be facing off in the finals. And what's compelling about them is not only are these the two best defensive teams in the A, but most importantly, they're the two most versatile teams in the NBA. When you are an NBA franchise, you hope to construct a roster like the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics. That's how they're very similar in those respects. They draft extremely well. They built these teams from the ground up. Well, when you look at the Warriors and what's defined them, it's been their small ball, right? Their ability to switch every single position, their depth lineup. Now the iteration of it includes Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, Gary Payton II. Obviously, Steph and Poole are in the lineup, but those aren't elite defenders. Now, the first iteration of it was the most formidable when you had Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, a healthy young Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Harrison Barnes, and then eventually got upgraded to KD surrounding Steph. But the interesting thing is the Celtics, you can argue, are just as versatile. Because when you look at the Celtics roster, they've got height, they've got length, especially at the wings positions along the perimeter with Tatum, with Brown, with Derek White, with Marcus Smart, with Al Horford, with Grant Williams. They can switch every single position. And even though Rob Williams isn't necessarily laterally the quickest 7-footer on the perimeter, he can still hang with some of those wings along the perimeter. But more importantly, he provides that defensive anchor in the middle. And that's the difference. The Warriors, this is a situation where, as serviceable and productive as Kevon Looney is, and he brings a whole lot, packs a big punch for the Warriors, this is a situation where you'd love to have a James Wiseman in the lineup who could potentially offset whatever it is that Rob Williams can't present. Because that's the only area that the Warriors can kind of be exposed, is in the middle, in the interior, just a little bit. So, but these teams are very similar in how they're constructed. And I don't think that the Celtics are going to be necessarily fazed by this finals stage because of all the battles they've had to go through. But with that being said, the fact of the matter is they're not nearly as tested in the finals as this core group is for Golden State. And that's why ultimately I'm leaning towards the Warriors in this series. But I'm paying Boston the ultimate compliment by saying that I do think it's going to go the distance. I do think it will go 7 games because I think Boston, for whatever reason, has a proclivity to play better on the road than they do at home. And I think that just when it looks like Golden State might be pulling away in this series, Boston may come up with a huge road win. I mean, they won 3 of their 4 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics won at FTX Arena. So their ability to win on the road, I think, is huge. Coach Udoka has given them the moniker Road Warriors. That's ironic given the team that they're facing right now. So I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch. These two teams absolutely fit perfectly. They match up perfectly with one another, especially if you're a Celtics fan. You match up against the Warriors extremely well. Every single position, again, they can switch everything. They play with a tremendous amount of physicality. You can throw a lot of bodies at Steph, at Jordan Poole, at Klay Thompson. And then you look at some of the inner matchups, which I think is just as compelling because you've got obviously the little bit of tension between Marcus Smart and Steph Curry. Marcus Smart injuring Steph Curry for the final 2 to 3 weeks of the regular season. You've got Marcus Smart and Draymond Green battling for who is the quote-unquote legitimate defensive player of the year. You know, Draymond Green is going to have a lot to say about that. So I just think both sides have incredible narratives attached to their rivals to the NBA Finals. Obviously, the Warriors returning to the NBA Finals for the 6th time in 8 seasons. That's only been done by 2 other teams, the Bulls and the Lakers. The fact that here you have a team that had experienced such ecstasy, and in a matter of moments, all of a sudden, it turned into devastation and just cratering to rock bottom. You miss the postseason completely over the last 2 seasons, and then they've risen from the ashes and are back in the NBA Finals. And then on the flip side, the Boston Celtics, that core of Tatum, of Brown, of Smart, finally breaking through. A storied franchise like the Celtics, who were tied with the Lakers for the most NBA titles with 17, they're back on this stage. You have a lot of likable guys. Al Horford reaching the NBA Finals for the first time. So this is just an incredible matchup in the NBA Finals. I think this is one that NBA fans have kind of fantasized for several years, and now it's finally coming to fruition. And I cannot wait to get it started. Cannot wait for the series to get started on Thursday.